Rekha and Amitabh Bachchan. You know, you just hear the names together and a whole story instantly plays out in your mind. Decades have passed since they were last on screen together, but the mystique around them, it hasn't faded one bit. In fact, you could argue it's stronger now than it ever was.
But let's be honest, this goes way deeper than old film industry gossip, right? There's this feeling that something else is at play, something bigger, which is why we're all still so captivated. So the real question we're digging into is, after all this time, why does their story still feel so incredibly powerful? Why does it feel less like a series of choices and more like destiny?
All right, let's dive into our first section, an unending story. We're going to go beyond the headlines and the rumors and look at this whole thing through a really fascinating lens, a theory that might just explain why this modern myth has such an unbreakable hold on all of us. Because this feels so much bigger than just a celebrity affair, doesn't it? It's like we're watching a narrative that no scriptwriter could ever dream up, one that seems guided by some force that is way beyond simple chance or coincidence. And that brings us right to our second section, which is really the core idea of this whole explainer, a concept we're calling the mythic parallel theory. Seriously, this is a lens that's going to make you see this entire story in a completely new light. So, what in the world is mythic parallelism? Well, think of it like this. It's the theory that two lives can physically separate, go their own ways, but continue to run on these perfect parallel tracks. They end up mirroring each other in their struggles, their big comebacks, and even in the public symbols they become. It's like their energies stay connected, even from a distance. Okay, on to part 3, where we'll look at the exact moment that life became cinema. Because to really get how this myth took hold, we have to go back to one single pivotal event, a movie that was so much more than just a movie. The year is 1981, and the film Silsila hits theaters. And it wasn't just a film, it was a cultural explosion. All those off-screen rumors about a love triangle were put right there on the big screen for everyone to see. And in that moment, the lines between what was real and what was fiction, they didn't just blur, they completely vanished. And you know what? That effect was permanent. That film cemented their story into our collective memory, and it transformed them from just actors into something way bigger. They became these mythic characters in a story that everyone, and I mean everyone, felt like they were a part of. And here's the most crucial part. After Silsila, they never had to appear together ever again. The idea of them, this unresolved, unfinished story, became way more powerful than their actual physical presence ever could be. The myth could now survive and grow all on its own. So this leads us to our fourth section, two paths, one symmetry. And this is where the theory gets almost, well, uncanny. Because after they went their separate ways, both in their personal lives and professionally, their life stories started to unfold with this startling, mirrored symmetry. Just look at the symmetrical trials they went through. On one side, you have Amitabh facing these massive public hardships, a near-fatal accident on set, damaging political scandals, and his company nearly going bankrupt. And on the other side, you have Rekha, facing a totally different but equally crushing set of trials. Constant, harsh judgment from society, a deep personal loneliness, and this mysterious withdrawal from the public eye. But then, just watch what happens next. Out of all that struggle came these incredible, symmetrical rebirths. Amitabh completely reinvented himself, rising to become the absolute elder statesman of Indian cinema. And at the same time, Rekha transcended all her personal struggles to become this timeless, untouchable icon of mysterious, eternal femininity. They were both broken down and both were reborn in parallel. And this whole process really solidified them into these powerful, complementary archetypes. Amita became the symbol of power mastered. He's all about dignity, authority, like a mountain that can weather any storm. And Rekha, she became the icon of pain mastered, the absolute embodiment of resilience and beauty, someone who took all the bitterness life threw at her and turned it into this timeless, silent grace. And this brings us to our fifth section. And honestly, this might be the most mind-bending part of the whole theory, the legend of absence. See, we always think of a couple getting together as the happy ending, but in this story, their separation wasn't the end. It was the climax that made the story immortal. Just stop and think about it for a second.
If they'd actually gotten together, it would have become just another story. It would have had a beginning, a middle, and an end. It would have been normal, finite. But by staying separate, by leaving that giant question mark hanging in the air forever, their story jumped from the everyday into the realm of myth.
This whole dynamic is captured perfectly in this one line. It really echoes the great mythic love stories like Radha and Krishna. Their love is defined by the fact that it's eternal, but their union is impossible. And that is exactly why the legend is everlasting. So, that absence you feel in their story, it's not a hole. It's the engine. It's an active force that creates the permanent, tantalizing question, what if? And that question is the fuel that has kept this legend burning brightly for more than 40 years. Okay, so let's pull all of this together in our final section and ask the big question. Was this all written in the stars? Because when you lay out all the pieces side by side, the story starts to feel less like a string of coincidences and a lot more like well, a fated narrative. So here it is, the recipe for this modern myth. You start with a foundation that completely blurred reality and fiction. Then you add these perfectly symmetrical journeys of hardship and reinvention. That leads to the creation of these powerful, complementary archetypes. And the secret ingredient that holds it all together? The immortalizing power of their silence and separation. And that is why this whole thing feels almost supernatural, right? This isn't the work of some clever PR team or brilliant career planning. No marketing agency on earth could write a script this perfect, one that captivates generation after generation. It feels completely organic, almost destined. Ultimately, this whole theory of mythic parallelism, at least as it applies to them, can be boiled down to one single powerful idea. Separate bodies, one myth. Their true cultural power, their iconic, legendary status, wasn't achieved by them coming together. It was achieved precisely because they remained apart. And in doing that, they both ascended from the world of the ordinary into the world of the mythic. So that leaves us with one last thought. We've used this fascinating lens to look at Rekha and Amitabh, but is this pattern, this mythic parallelism, something that is totally unique just to them? Or, and this is the really interesting part, if you start looking for it, can you see this same dynamic playing out with other famous figures? Think about iconic pairs in film, in politics, maybe even in history. Two lives that run on separate but eerily parallel tracks, creating a legend that becomes so much greater than the sum of its parts. It's definitely something to think about.